you try to get really nice shells, ones that have a nice smooth top, pretty little ruffled feet, full centers, and yet you end up with this. What in the world is going on? Hello and welcome to Jackson's Job. This is the place where things can and often go wrong while baking. You'll see how to fix recipes when they go upside down and how to avoid common mistakes. Let's learn some common pitfalls with the French macaron. The overmixed batter is very common. Perhaps you're trying to do a figure eight just like you saw in so many videos and you don't understand why it's not working. It's really nice and shiny and you get that figure eight onto your batter. Well, guess what? This is actually overmixed. By the time you put it into your piping bag and you start piping these cookies out onto your sheet, it's just way too runny and you're going to end up with some problems. We will pipe some onto a tray so you can see what to look for and also to know how it is overmixed. At this point, there's not much you can do. You can use the shells for decoration, crunch them up, put them on some ice cream. But see how it's coming out of the bag, and if you look at the nozzle, it is dripping out of the nozzle before I even get a chance to pipe them. Now it does look like they're doing well because they're settling in, but when you crack one open, they are completely hollow. This is a common issue. Hollow cookies come from either overmixed batter or overmixed egg whites. Next time, just mix that batter just a little bit less. Out of all the things to have, an undermixed batter is best for the beginner. Now perhaps you did a fold and it looks like it's running off your spatula, but it's just not quite sinking back in. It looks like this, it just stays on top. And then when you pipe it out, it's a really nice thick batter. It's easy to work with. The tops are not sinking back in. They are just staying pretty much the same. This is actually okay. You're going to have full shells and they are going to taste wonderful. Having undermixed batter is better than having overmixed batter. Overmixed batter pretty much ruins your cookies. Undermixed batter is just a presentation thing. And you can actually combat this. All you have to do is give your tray a couple taps on the bottom and it will settle them out. But I want to show you what they look like when you don't tap them so you can see the difference between an undermixed shell and an overmixed shell. When you open it, it'll be a nice full shell. There might be some air bubbles, but you're pretty much going to have a full cookie. But all it takes to fix this is just to give the pan a few whacks. It will smooth out the surfaces and then you can go on to the next step. Now, baked on non-stick, this is something nobody talks about. It makes sense that you could bake these on a non-stick pan, but unfortunately, this is what happens when you do. They just get completely stuck, and I don't know why it won't work, but it doesn't. Probably one of the saddest things is when you underbake them. You go to pull them off the paper and the top separates from the base. You can also notice on the edges it's sticking quite a bit when you're trying to pull them off of your parchment paper, and if you would have stopped there and popped them back in the oven another minute or two, they would have been perfect. But what do you do when they're underbaked? Well, there's not much you can do. They actually taste pretty bad and I wouldn't recommend eating them. Let me open one up so you can see. They're pretty gooey on the inside. They're just not pleasant. It's like eating underbaked cake batter. I wouldn't recommend it. Now, as opposed to underbaked, we have some overbaked ones. You can often tell they're overbaked when you go to remove them because they just start flying off the parchment paper. And when you open them up, they are chalky and they're very hard. Sometimes you can put filling in them and let them sit for 3 to 5 days and they will soften up, but they're never going to be quite the same. Now we have some over-dried ones that we left too long. And a lot of times what happens, you'll get this mushroom effect where one side will actually get feet and the other side will not have feet. It's a very interesting concept. And then when you crack them open, the shell is really hard and they just kind of crumble apart. They're edible, but they're not great. Next up is not rested. You'll have no feet. You'll often have cracked tops. And then when they dome, they don't bake well on the bottom. As you can see, we have some lopsided feet. Some have no feet at all. And then when you open them up, they have uneven structure. They're edible, but they're not the greatest in the world. Just let them rest longer next time. Over whipped egg whites is one of those controversial ingredients. I don't recommend ever going to stiff peaks. You leave no room for error when this happens. When they are stiff, they cannot expand in the oven and correct minor errors that you made while folding. Let's say that we folded this absolutely perfectly. You can still have problems from when you get it into the bag and you're piping them. Or say if you want to tap them on the bottom of the pan, you have so much less leeway because those egg whites are now so fragile that they can collapse with any step. We'll pipe some of these out so that you can see that they are settling nicely. You saw that the batter was a really good consistency, and yet when we bake them, there's problems. We'll try this again. We'll slightly undermix it this time so I can show you it's not just the fact that I overmixed the batter or maybe transferred it wrong. We're going to do a stiff peak again, and then we're going to open them up. The ruffles on the feet are not as nice when you go to this method, and then when you open them up, once again, we have some hollow shells. They're not as hollow as the ones with the overmixed batter. They are still quite hollow. Next up is poorly ground almond shells. Now this happens with the cheaper flours. You got poorly ground almond meal. You'll see speckles on the top and you won't have this really nice smooth surface. This is one of my favorites. This is when you have excessive egg whites. You have too many egg whites to your recipe and you decided you were just going to wing it and not measure out your ingredients. Some eggs have more egg white than others. It's just the way chickens work. So if you don't use the right ratios, you'll end up with this meringue type cookie that is really full in the center and it looks wonderful, but it tastes more like an angel food cake than it does a macaron. And then we have the just right macaron, a really nice full shell. It collapses when you press onto it, but it holds its shape otherwise, has really nice ruffly feet and a shiny top. If you want the recipe to make macarons, I'll include it below, but this was just a general troubleshooting guide to help you see what's going on with some of your cookie shells and hopefully fix them in the future. And what do you do with all those ruined shells? Well, Macaron Maggie is here to help us out, and so is Raymond and Jackson. These dogs are just hilarious. I'm telling you, I have to be really careful giving them to them because they will eat these until they make themselves sick. And they're always begging for more. I'm sorry, guys. We'll just eat just a little bit more and then we're going to have to go. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. I had to screw up so many macarons, and I'm telling you, it made my heart hurt to see all these broken shells and cracks. Don't fret when things like this happen in the kitchen. And remember, this is the world's most difficult cookie. You're going to make a lot of mistakes when you learn how to make them. That's part of the learning process. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and as always, happy baking.